Hey everyone, welcome to another Intro to HTML video. In this video, what I want to do is I want to work with all of the typography or changing all of the type styles in my document. So far, I've created this web page right here that you see from all of the measurements and all of the requirements from the comp. We've got some background colors in there that we like. Some of them I might change, but I might keep some of them. I've got all the placeholder text. I've got all of the HTML elements that I need to create the structure I need. All the measurements match. The white space looks good. Okay? If you need to review this, you might have to go back to some of those previous videos and make sure that your comp looks exactly like mine before you move on. If it doesn't, review those videos, get all that markup written, and make sure that it looks the way mine looks. All right, let's go into some of the typography. You may recall from a previous video that I added an import statement for Google Fonts right here. And I chose the fonts Cardo, Josephine Sans, and Josephine Slab. If we look at those on Google Fonts, this is what Josephine Sans looked like, and this is what Josephine Slab looked like. Sans I'm going to use for all of my headings. Slab I'm going to use for the text in the feature. And then I also had Cardo, which I'm going to use for my body copy, and that's right here. This is the part that I'm going to use for all of my text inside of in all of the articles and things like that. All right, let's go on to doing the styling. I made a section in my style sheet that is for just type styles. And I pasted all the font family declarations for Cardo, Josephine Sans, and Josephine Slab. So it's right here and it's easy to access. First thing that I want to do in here is I want to set the font for the entire body of the document. Everything in here is going to have the same font to start with. And then we will go in and give specific font families to all of the headings and such. All right, so body copy, we're going to put in there by selecting body. And I'm going to use Cardo because that's my serif font. You don't always have to use a serif for the body copy, but I chose to this time. I'm going to save it, check it in the browser, and see how it looks. Yes, so everything changed to Cardo. You can see all of my captions, all of my H2s, all of my paragraphs. Everything is Cardo. Now, I want all my headings to be my Josephine Sans. So I'm going to make a selector that selects all of the headings. Remember, we can do this with a comma-separated list. H1, comma, H2, comma, H3, comma, H4, comma, H5, comma, H6, and then we've got our declaration block. I'm just going to do all of them with this same style. I probably will never use 4, 5, and 6. If you're using 4, 5, and 6 in your web page, more than likely you're not using them correctly. Some of you may find a reason for it, but more than likely you're not going to find a reason to get that deep into the hierarchy. If you don't understand what I'm talking about with the heading hierarchy, you need to review several of those videos where I address this. I've addressed it a lot, and I've tried to reinforce it throughout this series. So if you're finding yourself using 4, 5, and 6, you should question yourself, why am I using these? Anyways, I'm going to use Josephine Sans for all of my headings. Paste it in, save it, check it, see if it worked. There we go. You can see my H1 and my H2s are all Josephine Sans now. All right, now I want to adjust the sizes of my headings because they're all too small. H1s should be the biggest. They're usually 2 M's in size, 2M. So I'm going to go H1, font size, 2M. Save it, refresh in the browser, and there we go. This is now 2 M's in size. I want to make it a little bit more bold too. Let's see if bold works. Made it a little bit heavier, so I kind of like that. Now, let's adjust our H2s. We need to make them a little bit bigger. We need to make them not quite as big as my H1s, but we want them to be pretty close. So I'll go H2. And I'm just going to copy these two statements because I'm going to use them both. And paste it in. I'm going to make my font size 1.75. 1 3/4 of an M, and I'm also going to make them bold. See how that looks. That looks pretty good. They're nice and bold. They stand out from the rest of the copy. They catch our attention when we see them in body copy. That looks great. Good, so I've got my H1s and H2s sorted out. Now, let's see what they look like as a little bit of a different color. Remember, we had some colors in here that we had chosen in our color palette, and we've got a red. I'm going to see what my headings look like when they're red. I don't know if it's going to work. We'll see. Paste it in there. It's going to be my EA 3057. Haven't used it yet. How's that look? Ooh, that's really hard to read against this darker gray. So I might have to reassess that. Maybe I'll do a different color than this medium gray behind my feature and behind my header and my nav. So my feature, let's see what it looks like with white back there. Just plain white. Save it. Feature and then header. Save it. Check it in the browser. You know, that looks pretty good. That heading really stands out against the white. But the white is also pretty bold. I might have to address that later. But I think I want this red for my headings for now. Okay, so I've got my headings sorted out. Now, let's sort out the body copy in the feature. So I'm going to get a class called feature text, which I have right here. It's floated left. The width is 85%, and the margin left is 2. I need to actually apply that to my feature text here because I deleted it. It shouldn't be deleted for you. There we go. Refresh it, and there we go. That's what I want. Now, I said that I wanted my feature text to have the Josephine slab as the font family. Okay? I'm going to go up and find my feature text. I'm actually going to cut this from here and bring it down with the rest of my type styles. Okay? So I'll go right here. And the font family, oops, I was just going to be Josephine slab, so I'll just copy it, paste it, save it, check it, and there, it did change to the Josephine slab. It's kind of hard to see. It's a little bit small. I might make it bigger because this feature is something that should be bold, it should stand out, catch our attention. So I'm going to make it a little bit larger. Font size. Let's see what happens when we go up to 1.25 M. Let's see if that's big enough. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to go up to 1.5 and see if it's too much. So font size 1.5 M in my feature text. That looks pretty good too. We might go down a little bit on it. It depends. So for now, I'm going to keep that. Let's see what it looks like when it's bold. Save it, refresh it. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's a little bit chunky. I kind of like it, but it feels too close. Everything feels too close. So I can address two things for that. I can address letter spacing and line height. I'm going to start with line height on this. And let's see what happens when I use a percentage. 105%. Let's see what happens there. Okay, it gave it a little bit of extra space. So line height has a default of 100. So if we go more than 100, it's going to make it bigger. If we go less than 100, it's going to make it smaller. So I'm going to go up to 115, pushing it further. See if that's too much. That's looking pretty good. Let's see what it's at 125. That's a little too much. So what I might do is I might go down to 120, and I might decrease my font size to 1.3. Let's see if we like this. That looks better. It's got a nice bit of space in between my lines. The font size is just big enough. I'm going to try one more thing. I'm going to go up to 125 on the line height and see if it looks good. There. I'm satisfied with this. So I think my feature is sorted out. The typography looks good. We've got the slabby font in here. It relates to the heading, but it's not too close. Okay. Let's try one more thing. I said we could try letter spacing on this. And I'm going to start with 1M. This is going to look ridiculous. But see how much space an M is? It's a full character in between all the letters. It's totally unreadable. So we know that's too much. Let's try 0.125M. It's an eighth of an M. That's looking a little better, but they still feel kind of disconnected. Let's go 0.05M. That's a little bit better. It spaces them out enough, but the letters are close enough together that they have proximity and we can read them. Let's see what happens with a little bit of line spacing on the headings. I'm going to paste that same 0.05M in all the headings, save it, and refresh it. That's kind of nice. I like that little bit of extra spacing in there. It makes them stand out, makes them a little more bold. Now, we've got one last thing to address here, would be the body copy. The body copy is really condensed. I'm going to keep the size, I'm going to keep the font, but what I want to do is give it a little bit of line spacing. So I'm going to select all paragraphs inside of articles. And I will go line spacing, or line height rather. And let's start at 120%, just like we did before. Okay, save it, refresh it. It gave it just enough spacing that it looks pretty good. Let's try a little more, because I like to find something that feels comfortable, and then I like to push it. 130. You know, that's kind of all right too. It gives us just a little bit of space. Great. The last thing I want to address are the figures, because they have not been really addressed yet. I want to give a little bit of margin around my text there, so it's not touching or breaking out of their boxes, and maybe even change the captions to be my slab. So let's try that. I'm going to select Fig Caption. And I will go my Josephine slab. Oops, wrong one. Where's my slab? There we go. Copy. Paste. Save it. Check it. There, it changes the slab. Now I want to give it a little bit of margin. I'm going to start with something a little bit bigger. Let's see what 3% looks like. That gave it a little bit of space there. There's something funny going on with that one. Let's check that. That's my figure inside of the sidebar. Okay, so it's marked up just normally, figure, paragraph. We might have to add a little bit of extra margin below it. So I will do sidebar, fig caption, margin bottom. Let's try 6% to start with. See what it looks like. It's getting there. And it's just pushing all of that away. We need to actually push its container down. So sidebar, we've got our figure, side figure, fig caption. Let's see what the side figure class has going on in it, because there might be something that's affecting it. Side figure, we've got our width set, we've got our margin set to auto. Let's give the side figure a little bit of padding on the bottom. %. There we go. It got a little bit of padding there. All right, so we've got our figures figured out. We've got all of our line height figured out. We've got all of our typography figured out. The footer is the last thing to address. Let's start by giving the footer just a little bit of padding. Start with 2%, save it, refresh it. That's a little bit too much. Let's give it a little less. Save it, 1%, save it, refresh it. And that's still quite a bit. Let's see what's actually pushing on that. Inspect that. Now we can look at our computed styles here and see what's happening. So on our paragraph here, I've got some margin here, which is coming from the paragraphs. And in the footer, I've got some padding. So those two things are kind of doubling up. Let's try this. In my footer, I'm going to go footer paragraph. I'm going to take away some of that margin. Let's see what it looks like when I set it to 0. That's a little bit better. Now, I can increase my padding on my footer just a little bit to make it feel a little bit better. Where did I put that? There's my footer paragraph. Oh yeah, right here. Padding, maybe increase it to 2%. That looks a little bit better. Now, I think this page has come together nicely. If I were to redesign this in the future, I might slightly change some of these colors. I might use, instead of white here, just a slightly darker color than white, like a very, very light gray and a very, very light gray up here. One where the heading stands out, but we've got enough difference from its background here. And I might even go darker on the background and the body. But what we have here is a fully functioning web page designed from a comp. We've set all the white space, we've done all the typography, we've made sure everything looks the way we want it to look, we've pushed everything around so it fits with the comp. I think we've summed up pretty well this whole set of videos. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a lot.